Indie Uproar Paint Chase. One of the things I really love about UFO 50 as someone who grew up in the era of games that this collection is emulating is that I can draw a lot of parallels to games that helped to inspire the UFO 50 games. Now, I'm not saying any games in UFO 50 are ripoffs or clones, not at all, as while you can clearly see their inspiration, that's all it is, as all of these games stand on their own as a fun experience without many direct comparisons. For example, here we have Paint Chase, a maze game with elements similar to the Alpha Denshi maze game Crush Roller, as you race around painting the ground behind you, with a little bit of Rally X thrown in for the car combat elements, as you ram into enemies to defeat them and stop them from painting your territory, and with just a dash of Pacman and Q*bert thrown in, with the various mini cutscenes that play every few levels, and manage to tell a fairly simple story. In this case, you are a painting rally car taking place in a contest and competing for an unknown prize at the end of 25 increasingly difficult levels, where your ultimate goal is to paint as much of the ground blue as possible. You're given a quota to match at the start of each level, anywhere from 50 to 80%. And have a very strict time limit to do so. But what makes your job difficult is that enemy vehicles will spawn in, all of which will start covering the ground in red paint, painting over your progress, and necessitating the need to destroy them and go back over previously covered ground. Now, the cool part is that you're basically invincible. You can just ram into enemies and they'll instantly be defeated, with the exception being vehicles that have spikes on them. You have to avoid hitting them from the front or end up stunned for a not insignificant amount of time. Different enemies can also have different abilities that will occasionally activate and can make keeping a majority of the screen covered a nightmare. Aside from the slow-moving spiked vehicles that don't show up until much later, you'll have the basic rally cars, planes that can shoot paintballs in the direction that they're facing, that can cover a good distance, these slugs that are actually faster than most other vehicles and will spawn two at a time from a single spawn point, and these chunky rolling grenades that will explode if left alone for too long and cover a huge distance of the area. If one of those guys goes off while the timer is close to out, you've basically lost. If you fail to meet the quota, you lose a life and have to start the level over with a clean slate, lose all your lives, and go back to the beginning. So pretty standard fare for an arcade game of this style. It controls well, but there's a quirk about it that took me a while to unlearn. In a lot of maze games of this style, you can quickly turn around by hitting the opposite direction of where you're moving. But in this game, all that does is cause you to brake, which only really has utility when spiked vehicles start showing up, since you can use the brake to avoid getting caught by them around a corner. But more often than not, I ended up accidentally using it and slowing down at the worst possible time. I was never able to get a handle on when enemies would spawn as well. Yes, new enemies will only spawn after you've defeated everything that came out of a spawner, and you do have to prioritize certain enemies, but it can be frustrating when there are so many enemies out at once that you don't really have a good feel of where you should go and what you should deal with next, all while dealing with a short countdown that always manages to catch me off guard. There are also power-ups you can grab, like speed boosters that make you go faster, clocks that stop both enemies and the timer for a brief moment, and a drone spawner that will make little mini helicopters spawn that will cover the ground in blue paint until it runs into an enemy. And how these power-ups are implemented is pretty interesting. You gain them by rolling over the power-up panel with blue paint, but after that you can't use the power-up again unless an enemy paints over that space, and then you can in turn paint over it yourself again. It's pretty clever, but it also means that there are going to be plenty of times when you use a power-up early on, only for it to never become available again, because the enemies don't draw over it, or they do it so close to the end of the match that you can't take advantage of it. I gotta be honest, this is the first game so far that didn't really grab me. It's not bad, of course, it works well and it can be fun in short bursts, but it's a game that didn't really keep my interest for as long as the previous games did. And with how easy it is to fail just because of bad enemy spawn patterns, I don't know. It's totally doable, but the short stage length and the overwhelming amount of opposition you have to deal with in later stages leads to a game that is fast-paced but makes me feel stressed when I play it. It's certainly a game that takes practice, but it's not really one that I'm interested in perfecting. This is the sort of thing I'd probably hop onto when I really just want a quick burst of stimulation that most likely won't last that long. Again, not bad, but I'd personally be more interested in playing Pacman or Crush Roller before this one, I think.